Well, hello, everybody. My name's Hedley Freake. I was born in England, and my mother lost it after the time in January when several oranges would appear in the greengrocery store. And that meant that it was time for her to make marmalade. They were only there for about 2 weekends out of the year, sort of towards the end of January. You've probably never seen a Seville orange. Looks a little like an ordinary orange, maybe a little funky, a little more marks on the skin, but when we cut them open, you'll see that they're actually quite different from ordinary oranges. If you tried to eat one of these, you would spit it out because it's so bitter, it's not sweet, it's sour. You really need to cook them in order to take full benefit of their potential. And as you will see, when we get to that point, we use an unholy amount of sugar in order to balance out the bitterness of the fruit. So today we're going to make Seville orange marmalade. And what I'm going to do is start by washing the fruit, cutting it open, taking out the pits, processing it. You will see as we go along. So first, I'm going to wash the fruit. Now we have semi-clean Seville oranges. And if I cut one in half, I don't know how, let me come show you what this looks like. Lots and lots of pits. If you could put your tongue into the camera and stick it in there, you would recoil if you put it in there. This is a typical Seville orange. So maybe in order to speed the process, we can have other people cut them in half. And what I'm doing here is cleaning out the inside. There's still some pith left in there. If the pith comes out, it's going to go here. One of the things about Seville oranges is that the pectin, according to Mrs. Beaton, who is the sort of the Bible of British cooking, the pectin is in the pith and in the pits. And so, although we do not want marmalade full of pits, we do need to use them to make sure that we get a good setting temperature, a good setting marmalade. So I'm getting out some of the pits, some of the, no, the other way. And reserving those pits in cheesecloth in order that we can boil them up with the rest of the oranges. So we've got a nice collection of halved oranges and lemons. So the recipe that I'm following, sort of, I'm not a great one for recipes, let it be said, is about 3 pounds of oranges, 3 to 4 pounds of oranges. We've got a double recipe of oranges here. There's that flat of oranges that you saw contains probably 8 pounds or something like that of oranges. And I added to that 6 lemons. And so we are going to get, well, let me cut them to start with. and somebody else can take over the juicing. So I'm going to put the like this, so we have 4 pieces, and now I'm gonna shred. There's a lot of chopping involved in making marmalade, and so watch your fingers. The skins sometimes look a little funky, but it doesn't seem to affect the flavor. So although there are some brown markings on some of these, my experience is that you chop it up, you cook it up, nobody ever knows or tastes. It's fine. So we have a series of bags with pits, which in England are called pips.
Pips?
Pips.
Oh.
Yeah, we have pips in our oranges. We do not have pits. Pit is a hole in the ground. I don't know what it's got to do with. And some of the pith. And so what I'm doing is just sealing it off inside this cheesecloth so that we can boil it up with the orange peel, but keep it separate. Have you got any more string here? Here you see a pot. Here you see our sliced oranges. It's got the juice in there as well. We are going to suspend the pits in a muslin bag from this so that it boils up. And what I'm going to do now is add the water. And for every pound of oranges, you want about a pint and a half of water. And so, what do we have? Do we have something to measure? Here we see. So, here we have, okay, so I'm going to add, I've got 8 pounds of oranges here. I'm going to add about 12 pints of water to this. Which is, so everything's in there now. Take a while for this pot to get up to a boil, but once it does, we'll boil it for, we'll test it in an hour. Once it's boiled for an hour, we'll see how it's doing. So, in the background, excitingly, you can see the marmalade cooking, but nothing like that. And so, while that's going on, we're going to make some scones because the people working here need to be sustained in order to complete this marathon of marmalade day. And so we've got some soup there that Chelsea made. I'm going to make cheese scones to keep going with the British theme. Now, normally I make currant scones and I put potted cream and raspberry jam and things like that. But that doesn't go so well with soup. So before I left home, I got myself organized and brought the ingredients to make cheese scones. So what I have here is a pound of flour, 4 teaspoonfuls of baking powder, about half a teaspoon of salt, good bit of black pepper, and then a few shakes of cayenne. And so that, ingredient number 1. Ingredient number 2 is butter. And we want to add a lot of cheese, so probably 2 ounces. Scones do not have very much butter in, so I'm just going to put half of this stick of butter in here. And rub it in to the flour. So when you're making scones, you can play around with it as much as you like at this point before you put any liquid in. But once you put the liquid in, you want to mix it as little as possible. So I'm just breaking up the butter by rubbing it between my fingers. It's always good when you're cooking if you can get your hands into it. The best tools in a kitchen are your hands. So I'm just letting it rub between my fingers until most of that butter is distributed. Okay, it's almost there. You're making cheese scones. If I was making fruit scones that I told you I liked, I wouldn't have put cayenne pepper in. You might guess that. I wouldn't have put any pepper in. I would still put the salt in probably, but I would put a couple of tablespoonfuls of sugar. Scones are very moderate things, so they don't need a lot of salt, they don't need a lot of sugar. Okay, so I've got my butter rubbed in. Cheddar cheese. For this, I'm going to put in, I would think, about a pound of flour, maybe 4 ounces of cheese. 4 or 5 ounces of cheese. Just mixing that so it's distributed. And now, for my pound of flour, I've got half a pint of milk. But this is a British half pint, you'll be pleased to know. So it's 10 fluid ounces of milk. And I'm going to just pour it in, all in one go. I'm going to mix it around as little as possible, just to get the flour in there. Not making bread, I'm making scones. So this is good. So it's holding together as one clump pretty much now. I'll get it off my fingers. You need a little bit of flour to roll it out. You put it in here. Okay. Lightly flour the board. Get my dough out. It's holding together sort of, and that sort of is plenty enough because I don't want to work it off. There it is. Get my trusty rolling pin, flour the rolling pin lightly. And I'm going to roll it out. I don't know what that is, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, something like that. Now I've got my scone cutter, and I'm going to cut them out. Scones do not spread, and so you can put them as close as you like. There we go. It's good to get as many out as you can first time around because, as I said, you don't want to work it. So now I'm working it more so that this second batch that we're going to cut out now never quite rise as much as the first ones. So minimal work. Cut the rest of them out. Fill the tray.
How much they rise?
One last one. We'll put this little half one in the middle, maybe, because it'll cook a little slower in the middle. Okay, and now I've reserved some cheese that I'm going to put on top. So a nice little clump of cheese on top of each of the scones. That beep means my oven is ready, I think. Well, 10 minutes are up. It's time to get the scones out of the oven. And they look beautiful. If I can hold this without burning my hand. There they go. We'll put them down here. We'll let them sit for a couple of minutes and then we will consume. So the scones have been out of the oven now for a few minutes. The best way to eat the scone is just break it open. You can see how nice that is. And spread it with a little butter. Again, if we'd made those fruit scones that I was telling you about, we'd be spreading it with butter, and that would just be the beginning, because then we would spread it with jam, and that would be the middle part, and then we would spread it with clotted cream, which is food from the gods. But for the cheese scones, we don't want that, we just want butter. Cheese is going to add the rest of it. So here it is. Elizabeth, would you care to come and give us your verdict on this scone?
Well, it looks delicious.
Yeah.
And it looks light and flaky.
Yeah.
Nice brown cheese on top.
Great.
Yeah. Looks.
Take a bite.
All right. Breaks right off.
Yeah. We've got scones. They've been boiling for about an hour and a half now. And the peels are nice and soft. So what I'm going to do is take out the bags with the pits in. You know,
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I think we do.
Need to turn around.
Okay. Just going to liberate a few bits of peel that are stuck in between. Squeeze them a little bit to get some of the juice out, all that beautiful pectin. Got one more over here. I'm going to cut this one too. Here it is. Here's this.
A lot of it pretty thick.
No, it's not thick. It hasn't got any sugar in it,
Oh,
but it's got a little darker. It's reduced. Put a little bit of that back in. Okay. And this is the point where we're going to put in a ridiculous amount of sugar. That's a good question. Is this an American ridiculous amount, or this is a 10-pound bag?
I think it.
And we'll start with one 10-pound bag and see how it tastes. When do you get the chance to tip a 10-pound bag of sugar on something?
All back. Now, how many pounds in that bag?
In the bag, that was a 10-pound bag of sugar.
We were looking at bags that was 4.5 pounds of sugar. We used to always buy. That's right.
So the sugar's now dissolved in the into the marmalade mixture. It needs to heat back up to a boil. It came off the boil because we put all that large mass of sugar in. But as the sugar starts to caramelize, the temperature will rise above boiling point, and we want to get up to 221 degrees. Boiling point is 212. We get up to 221. That'll be the setting point for this marmalade. If you've got a thermometer, that's easy. You can just follow that. If you don't have a thermometer, you can do the cold saucer test, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. But it's probably going to take half an hour of boiling to get the temperature up to where we want it to be. We have been boiling this now with the sugar in for about an hour. We discovered that, first of all, we had to have 7-8 pounds of fruit, 8 pounds of fruit including the lemons. We put in 10 pounds of sugar. That turned out not to be enough, not so much from a flavor point of view. I think I can take this off now. Not so much from a flavor point of view, but more from getting the temperature up enough so it's going to set properly. We were aiming for a temperature of 221. Let's see where we are now. We are at 220.5. So close enough for scientific work, I think. But I just wanted to show the cold saucer test. It's actually a cold plate test in this case, but it's this principle is the same. All I'm going to do is put a couple of drops of the liquid onto the plate. And when you first do that, it looks like orange juice. And so you can't tell that it's warm, so you can't tell whether it's going to set or not. And you just stick it on the plate, which you probably can't see very well, but this is as best as I can do, and let it set. Let it cool. The plate is cooling down the marmalade, but I can feel the warmth of the marmalade through the plate, so it's not quite there yet. But then when it's cool, it should form a little skin, and you should be able to move it and have it more or less stay where it is. That's tasty. And so I'm not quite letting it live long enough, but in fact you can see probably, I don't know if you can see this or not properly, but I'm getting a little mound of marmalade there, which means that when I spread it on my toast for breakfast, it's going to stay there. So that shows me I'm ready. The temperature is now 220.8. So I think the temperature shows me I'm ready. So I'm turning it off. And what recipes tell you to do is to, first of all, scrape off the foam, which I think is worth doing, so I will do that. And then there's a little bit of white foam here on top. So scrape off the foam while it's hot.
What's the foam taste like?
You're about to find out, Mr. Jacobs. We will give you some. I don't know. I mean, I suppose you. I think that this is cosmetic. I don't think that it really matters. I don't think it's going to affect the jam very much, but I've got most of it off. And now just let it rest for a few minutes so that when we put it in jars, if it's a little bit cooler, we put it in jars that the peel will distribute through the jar rather than all floating to the top or sinking to the bottom. You can't see inside this pot. That's what we're talking about. There's our marmalade. So we've got our jars ready here. And because fill it to about ½ inch at the top, like that. Here comes the next. My mother, no. That's an interesting. I'm glad you asked me that question. So what we're going to do with these here in the kitchen is count, because it's very easy to do, and it will ensure they'll keep. Well, there's so much sugar in this. This will probably last a lifetime without anything, any other. But what my mother did, and this is what they do in England, is she used jam pot cutters. And jam pot cutters. And so there were a couple of different components to that. The first was a disc of waxed paper. So as soon as the jam was in the jar, the marmalade was in the jar, the disc of paper, waxed paper, would go on there, which is doing nothing to to preserve it. But it's keeping it, maybe keeping air off a little bit. And then when the jar is cooled, when the jam is cooled, there's a second layer, and it's cellophane. So a layer of cellophane that it's about this big to go on there. You wet it, and then put it on over the top, stretch it over the top, and put a rubber band around it. So if you just have a cloth, a wet cloth, just to wipe around in case there's any spots of ouch. This is hot. No, it's all right. It just, if it splashes, that's when I got it. But I can hold in the jars, it's fine. Although they do get hotter as the stuff goes in them, as Chelsea might experience.
That looks so good.
That's great. It's real marmalade.
It's real marmalade.
Yeah.
We only deal with the real stuff. It's the jars, we've got about or so left. So we will go to the click store cupboard and get a few more.
Well, you're right.
So here we have our final product, fresh out of the canner. Our yield was, let's see, these are ½ pint jars. We got 36 ½ pint jars, and these are actually 12-ounce ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So we've got about 45 half pints. Enjoy. Thank you all.